Welcome to the only place where real, raw, and vulnerable conversations happen with IFBB bikini pros to give you an inside look at their struggles, strategies, mindset, passions, and all of life beyond the stage. This podcast is made to inspire, motivate, and remind competitors and the average gym goer that even the most extreme lifestyles and elite athletes have their ups and downs. Thank you so much for tuning in today. I'm your host, Celeste Rains-Turk, and now it's time for the Confessions of a Bikini Pro podcast. In today's episode, we are speaking with a married mother to a 5.5-year-old boy who works as a nurse practitioner and a bikini competitor, of course. She started competing in 2014 as a full-time student, then had her baby in 2015 while her and her husband were both full-time students. And then 5 shows later in 2018, she earned her IFBB Pro card and the overall win at North Americans. She is currently taking time off now to focus on building in every single area of life, which I'm very much looking forward to talking to her about. And I can't wait for you guys to hear this. So welcome to the show, Joy Sheppard. How are you doing?
I am doing fabulous. Thank you so much for having me on your podcast. I'm extremely grateful and humbled. I've listened to your podcast since the very beginning. Like I vividly remember being on the stair mill and, hearing your voice and listening to all the pros. And it seemed, I was prepping at the time. So it seemed close in a way, like, oh, I could be like that one day, but yet also just a far-fetched fantasy. So to fast forward and be here today is, again, like very surreal. And I'm really honored. So thank you so much.
Oh, well, that makes me so happy. It is actually crazy to think about that because the podcast came out when you were prepping for the show you turned pro at.
Yeah. Time flies by. It seems like yesterday.
It does. It really does. So as you know, I like to hear if there's anything that you do or maybe a ritual you have right before your heel hits the stage.
Yes. It's definitely evolved in time. But I will say like the past 2 shows at nationals, it's almost like this 2-phase approach. The first one is, after I pump up and they're walking, myself and our lineup backstage, there is always this overwhelming sense of spiritual feeling in a way. It's almost hard to put into words, but it's very emotional. And I just feel always grateful to have the chance to even compete. And I think part of that is because every show that I've competed in, there's always been a life hurdle that I had to overcome to be able to be there that day. So that's the first part, like, oh gosh, thank you, God, thank you, universe, thank you, everybody, because I could not do it by myself. And then it transitions into like game time mode. So when I'm going up the stairs, I can see the judges, I see the person before me posing, I get into this kind of self-competitive mode, like you've worked hard, just kill it. I think those are the 2 words, kill it and leave nothing behind.
Oof, I love it. Yeah, you work too hard to leave anything on the table.
Yes, that's so true.
Beautiful. So it's gratitude and game time. And
yes,
in those moments, leading up to the stage, I think all the work that you've put in over the years, over the months, over the weeks comes to mind. And I actually think it's really awesome that you're taking time off right now to focus on mental health and family and building your physique. And I imagine that's going to feel especially great when you do step on stage again. And I was curious what inspired you to take that time.
Oh my gosh, Celeste, first of all, this is my first podcast. So I was this week, thinking about just my journey since 2014. And I was just taking some mental notes, and it was really difficult at first, kind of almost really heavy, because it's not just about bodybuilding in the past, 7 years. It's been kind of major life changes that it has evolved me so much as a human being, a wife, a mom. I mean, just my way of thinking and living. And then I think as a result of that, it's definitely impacted, my practical and philosophical approach to bodybuilding. But kind of to answer your question, like what, has helped me evolve the most. And to be honest, it's been going through some like really dark life struggles, the past several years. And it's forced me to like look at myself and my life and make some major changes. And so I think, my whole life, anytime things have been hard, in retrospect, it's been my biggest life, life savior in a way, because I can think differently. And then because I can think differently, I can behave differently, and it's impacted just who I am as a person. And so, yeah, I'm grateful for all of the adversity.
Wow. No, that's really amazing. And to be able to be grateful for that is so important. And when you're taking that time to grow in many different ways, whether that's during prep or in an improvement season, because both definitely present opportunities for growth, how do you feel that these phases, particularly when you're taking this time off, are going to help you when you do compete again? Like, what are you hoping it gives you?
Oh my gosh. It's like, I laugh because, the mindset shift from like 2014 to now, it's, the self work that I've done is now like going to be a game changer for when I go back on stage. And I think, um, like knowing myself, and knowing really authentically like why I want to compete and like what I want to get out of it. And, the transition in 2014 from like, this urgency, like I want to get a trophy, I know I see a lot of hashtags like road to pro. There's just a lot of, external validation, mindset, and kind of short-term thinking. And then now it's more just like embracing, um, the long-term game, kind of trusting the process, and knowing my self-worth, I think has been one of the biggest, um, life lessons since 2014. And so when I go back on stage to compete, it's really authentically for me. It's something that I want to push myself. I want to challenge myself, but it's also not my identity. It's like not who I am. And so I think that takes a lot of pressure off. Um, because again, the gains from it is more of like internal. It's more a character building, um, if anything else.
Absolutely. So true. And I actually want to go back to your first prep ever, because you had a broken foot, you were in school full time. Like there were things going on, and yet you were still going for it. Do you feel at that time you were chasing a trophy?
I think the first two shows in 2014, I actually like had no idea what I'm doing. So, kind of the backstory is, I knew I needed foot surgery. And so I've been an athlete my whole life. In college, I did boxing. Then after that, I did, CrossFit at a time when no one really knew what CrossFit was. And, so I knew I needed foot surgery. So I was thinking to myself, if I can't jump and I can't run, like what the heck am I going to do for fitness? Fitness has been such a big part of my life and my identity. And so I had this brilliant idea at the time, that I would find a personal trainer and do a bodybuilding show because I can train with one foot. So I found someone in San Francisco, and she had done a couple shows, and, she didn't really promote herself as a bikini coach per se, but again, because she was the only person I could find, bikini division was a newer division at the time. She was willing to train me, and I did tell her. I said, "Hey, look, I'd have no idea what I'm signing myself up for. I just know I want to do it in 4 months. The only caveat is that I have foot surgery, so you need to train me with one foot." And she said, "Okay." So then I had my foot surgery, and I think like 3 days after recovery, I remember, having my boot on my left foot, bloody gauze. It was raining at the time. I put this clear plastic bag over my foot with duct tape, and then I went to the gym. And I remember there was a personal trainer there, Jorge, and he went up to me and he was like, boo, I don't know if what you're doing is is healthy or is normal, because he's like, you have a broken foot and you're doing a single leg squat on a Smith machine. And I said, I am prepping for a show. So it's really relentless, but yeah, I don't think I even know really what I was signing myself up for until I experienced the first couple shows.
And what was that experience like for you?
Oh my gosh. I was so nervous, Celeste, that first two shows. My knees were shaking backstage.
I know
Like
exactly what you're talking about.
It's a trip because I because I've competed before, like I like pressure. But the bodybuilding sport was just something very new. So yeah, the first show was nervous. My mouth was really dry. I remember being backstage and taking like sips and then like spitting out Listerine. Um, and it was a little bit of a blur, but I knew that I had so much fun. There was something about it, a high that I knew even after the first show. I remember getting off stage and I told my husband, like, I found my sport. Like, I want to keep doing this. And then I have.
That's amazing. And I want to just say, like, from the beginning, you've built a lot of muscle over the years, and you've clearly found not just your sport, but before this, you had been very active, and then you transitioned to this, but you were doing other things. So did you stop doing the other types of training? Did you just decide this was your passion? Like, how did you decide to commit completely to this?
Yeah, I completely stopped CrossFit and I fully committed to just the pursuit of bodybuilding. And, in 2014, like even in my 20s, for example, if I had to define like what is fitness, in my 20s, like fitness was about, being fast, being strong, being athletic, looking a certain way, performing a certain way. And then as I turned, in my 30s, I would say fitness has been also like encompassing nutrition, sleep. It's a certain lifestyle. And I think bodybuilding definitely taught me the nutrition aspect of it. And then now that I'm going to be 40 next year, health and fitness to me is way more encompassing than just the physique. I think if I had like put a pyramid, like the bottom portion, what's most important to me is mental health, without a doubt. Then it would be like family, then it would be physical health, and the cherry on top would be pursuits and passions, which for me is bodybuilding. So yeah, I mean, the time when in 2014, my pyramid was just like pretty much all about pursuits and passions. So I gave up everything, Celeste. I my thought process and how I view health and fitness has completely evolved from my 20s to now. I'm going to be 40 next year. So in my 20s, it was all about pursuit and passions. That was it. And basically, to answer your question, Celeste, that was my singular focus in life. I would say obsessed, neurotic. I had functional anxiety about it, and it was definitely a high. And in my 30s, I've come to appreciate lifestyle, not just working out. So, health is also nutrition, it's sleep, it's minimizing stress. And now, with what I've learned in the past several years of my life, if I had to have a pyramid, the bottom portion would be mental health, like knowing who you are, your identity, your values. And then on top of that, it would be my connections. So, being a wife, being a mom, my family life, that's extremely important to me and my non-negotiable. And then, and again, then after that, it's going to be my hobbies. So bodybuilding at this point in the stage of my life now, it's a sport. It's something I have fun with. It's a cherry on top, but it doesn't consume me like it used to. And I think that's such a liberating feeling that I want a lot of athletes to be able to embrace as well.
I like that. It really is a good thing to consider is that this is not your entire life. It can be a massive part of your life and your lifestyle, and it can benefit so many areas of your life, but it doesn't have to necessarily consume your identity or, as you said, be at the bottom of the pyramid. And you have been really prioritizing your mental health and your family, it sounds like, compared to maybe previous years. So
Yeah.
what have the benefits been to prioritizing your mental health? What have you been doing to prioritize your mental health?
Yeah. It's funny because, like in 2014, I always thought of myself as what I would consider like high functioning and normal, like I don't really have anxiety. I'm accomplished. I love to work hard. I almost had it as like a badge of honor. Like the more I can do and pile on my plate, the better that I am. It was like really tied to my sense of worth. And I look back and I think that has a lot to do with my upbringing. I'm Asian American. I saw my mom and dad come as, immigrants to America. My mom worked really hard. I definitely got my work ethic from her. Kind of very relentless, and extremely stubborn. So it did serve me really well in my life. I've been able to graduate as a nurse practitioner, get my pro card and all of that. And, but yet at the same time, by the time I got my pro card in 2018, I felt really lost, kind of some context. I was in school full time to become a nurse practitioner. While I was prepping, my husband was in school is in school full time as well for 5 years to become a chiropractor. Um, in 2018, my son was 3 years old, so wild little toddler. His name is Kaizen, and so it was like juggling a lot, and so when I hit my rock bottom, like in 2019 in my life, I just felt like I didn't really know who I was. I thought I did at the time, but I was, again, like looking back, I was more like skidding the surface of life. And so I was at a point where like, I don't want to feel this way anymore. Like I'm 100% committed now to just knowing who I am and working out my issues. I was really like reactive to everything around me. I wasn't grounded. When things were chaotic around me, I became chaotic. And so I sought therapy. And that was like the beginning of my personal transformation.
Beautiful. Oh, I think that's amazing and so important to commit to that and be able, I should say, being able to recognize that that's something you were dealing with and needing support with, and then actually taking action to do something about it
Yeah,
is, courageous, and it's also necessary, I think, if we want to enjoy our life the way that we feel we're meant to. And there are a few key things that you mentioned there that I definitely want to come back to, but can you
sure.
tell us a bit about what, like, why you chose to go to therapy specifically for yourself and your relationship, or maybe not so much the why, but what it was about therapy that you found beneficial?
Um, I think just like intuitively, I knew like if I want to be happy, authentically pure happiness, I needed to make a big change. And I remember my first therapy session, Celeste, the therapist, it's like $260 an hour. Again, like I've never done
Mhm.
therapy before. And the woman at the time, she's like, I think I want you to learn how to feel. And I remember thinking, feel. And I told her, I said, look, doctor, like I respect your work, but I'm not here for like kumbaya. Just give me strategies, give me an action plan, and I will fully commit, just like a bodybuilding program, right? And she's like, no, 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 it's not about that. Like it's about feeling. And com- I had no idea what she was talking about. And I
Yeah.
said, okay, I'm a compliant person. I'm going to go home. I'm going to work on this for a week about feeling. So after that therapy session, I spent every day feeling, how do I feel? And I actually felt really annoyed of feeling. I felt like all I was doing was like complaining in my mind. I'm tired, I'm hungry. And it was really difficult, really, really difficult. And then in time, I realized I started to understand my feelings a bit more, and that was the key that unlocked the Pandora's box. Like a slew of emotions of my entire life that I've kind of was dormant. Like all my feelings were dormant until I unlocked it. And then you see kind of my messy, chaotic life. And I had to do a lot of backtracking, but through that process, again, it's a slow process and it's the most difficult work I've ever done in my entire life, but it's created so much clarity that I don't even recognize my old self at all. And it's kind of like, it's liberating and it's kind of scary because you're like, wow, I'm so different
Yeah.
in a good way, but I'm just, wow, I can't imagine if I didn't do the work, like how would life be like? And I wouldn't want to know that.
Right. And thank goodness for self-forgiveness too, like knowing that despite not being able to recognize yourself or want to go back to being that way, you can still say it's okay that I was there, and it's even better that I chose to prioritize myself moving forward.
Yeah, there's definitely like an extension of grace, and then
Mhm.
also like appreciative, like wow, I again, like I had to go through this. This was for me, not to me, and that mind shift alone, I think, again, creates a lot of like fearless mentality. I'm at a point now in my life, like, hey, there's conflict at home. If I prep and it's difficult, like it's okay, like bring it on. It's there to show me something about myself. It's here to serve me. But I will say, like with bodybuilding, when I first got into it, it was for fun, like in 2014. I had no idea. And then in time, it became, the sport became, um it kind of filled a void in my heart.
Mm.
I wanted to spend more time with my husband and have a deep, loving connection with him. Um, Yet I didn't really have a deep, loving connection with myself. And so the sport was like, I had Jamie, my coach with Fit Body Fusion. Like she was like my mother role. Her husband, Greg, we call him Papa Bear. He was like filled in as like a father role. It was like all love and support. And there was a sense of community with the team. There was goal setting, which, and it's kind of, it was all positive in the moment. But when you strip that all away, right? When you strip your coaches, you strip the stage, you strip the bodybuilding goals, you strip all of that. And if you don't have like a strong sense of self, um, you just kind of crash and fall. And I can see why a lot of competitors um, can end up with some eating disorder or even divorce, God forbid, because they didn't spend the time to work on like what really matters.
Absolutely. It is so much easier to have a reliant dependence on something, a reliant obsession, than it is to just have commitment. And I say that as in, if you have a reliance on something, it means that without it, something about you falls apart or misfunctions or doesn't fire. And then when you have a healthy obsession, a healthy commitment, you're able to step away and you're able to still be yourself without that. And unfortunately, many of us in the beginning, for me too, fitness was a crutch of many forms. And I think it's easier to justify it because it's doing what's not being done otherwise. It's
Yeah.
making you feel without having to let you feel, for example, or it's giving you a family without making you prioritize your own, or it's giving you this sense of worth without making you look at why wasn't that worth there in the first place. And you decided, okay, that's all great and I love it and I don't want to necessarily give up bodybuilding, but I also have to prioritize these other parts of the pyramid, to go back to that theme. And I think that, again, that's courageous and that's powerful, because if you're someone who hasn't felt, like really felt or processed feelings, to start doing that, it's hard enough as it is. And then to start doing that when things are even more challenging, it it takes a whole other level from you. And you brought up your parents earlier, and I really wanted to come back to this because I find it so fascinating that You talked about how you weren't very grounded, you were reactive, you learned the commitment to work from your mother's work ethic, and yet now both of your parents are Buddhist monks, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, my dad, it's actually, my mom she was like a Buddhist nun for a hot second, but my mom's a retired nurse, and my dad's a Thai Buddhist monk, and he's been a monk for, gosh, like when I was in college. It's been a long time,
Wow.
and so it's been very interesting. Um, because I can say without a doubt, I had two dads in this lifetime.
You broke up a little bit there.
Oh, sorry.
What did you say before? It was very interesting.
Yeah, it's been, an interesting journey to see my dad go from, business CEO to now Buddhist monk. And
Mhm.
that, his transformation in a way doesn't look that far off from my own.
Yeah.
And I think that, he definitely played a role and kind of influenced me that change is possible. But it's the type of work that is tremendously more difficult than prepping for any show. Because you just have to like make friends with your dark side,
Yeah.
dark night of the soul, as one psychologist phrases it. And it's easier not to. I mean, life is way easier if it was just like focus on bodybuilding, look great, um, you know, make friends on Instagram, and just kind of skid the surface. It's easy, but there's no depth to life. And so seeing my father, now monk, he is stripped away from many things: a marriage, time with his family, his outfits. He has the robe that he wears.
Mhm.
He looks like the Dalai Lama. Um, he's essentially like a beggar. They know people donate food twice a day, but yet he is the most um, at peace and um, the most rich, as he would define it, because he has everything within himself. And there's that sense of confidence of like knowing who you are, and his sense of purpose to serve others.
That's amazing. Do
Yeah.
you do you mind sharing what your mom's experience was too?
Yeah. Like in regards to my dad being a monk,
Yeah.
um, you know, um, my mom is all about wanting people to be better, and she sacrificed a lot. And my mom and dad did the best that they could as parents, and I can say that he loved me and my brother wholeheartedly, but there was a lot of like chaos going up. My mom worked 7 days a week, 16 hours a day as a nurse. um so she sacrificed her well-being a lot for the sake of family. um and then my dad tried to support my mom. And he had a lot of his own deep issues and resentment. And so how he handled that was a lot of yelling. So in our household, it was a little crazy. My dad yelled a lot, and I thought that was normal.
Mhm.
And my mom, how she handled difficult situations, that she would just distract her. I think that's part of the reason why she worked 16 hours a day. I didn't see her much, because feeling the moment of like conflict with my father and her deep sadness was probably, I can imagine, like very unbearable. And then my dad one day decided, he's going to kind of learn Buddhism, and as he did that, he started to change. It wasn't overnight per se, but I would say he stopped smoking cold turkey and everything like that. And for my mom, um, I think she was definitely proud of him. And then she was actually the one that encouraged him to be a monk. And then when he finally did become a monk, I think there was a level of emptiness and sadness in a way, and she had to also find herself. So yeah, that was kind of what I remember growing up.
Wow. So you really witnessed this transformation, and it's quite interesting actually, because from what I know and have learned about Buddhism, it's the acceptance that life has suffering and that there's a way to overcome it, and that's through achieving this mental peace that ultimately comes from not attaching yourself to anything tangibly, really, or resorting to external things to relieve pain or suffering, but rather almost sitting and meditating with it in some ways, and knowing that that can bring freedom. And when you have the mental peace, then you have the ability to see things more clearly, which are very beautiful concepts. But I can imagine from your perspective and your mom's perspective, and I'm sure when your dad was going through this process as well, you're facing these times of your past going, whew, that's when I was doing this, or, oh, this is what was happening at this time. And then you guys have to grieve the version of these people that you once knew as they transform for better or for worse. And I'm curious how witnessing that transformation maybe impacted your view of life or of family.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely, it was a heavy process, like you mentioned, just the awareness of like my upbringing and then how that
Mhm.
impacted me. Um, and it's interesting because I know the story. Like, oh, my dad became a monk and he transformed, and my mom is like really strong work ethic. And I remember telling myself, I'm always going to be that person that's going to have balance in my life and communicate how I feel and all these things. And then I end up like becoming just like my mom, and that's not a bad
Mhm.
thing in a way. Again, it did serve me for a short amount of time in my life where it's like, okay, anytime things were hard or difficult, I didn't want to sit in it. It's like unbearable. So what I would do is just go to the gym. You know,
Yeah.
if I was unhappy with myself or a sense of worth, it's like, let's sign up for a show. There's a lot of like distractions. But even, you can tell yourself one thing, like, this is where I want to be, but without action, there's really no change. And so I think, you know, observing my past is one thing, but I think again, like taking inventory of my own life and being really, really honest with myself was the first step to like making some big changes. And I know you mentioned earlier, like kind of the Buddhist philosophy of like acceptance and freedom.
Mhm.
I think that's like you hit the nail on the head. Like those are two like really big concepts in like Buddhist philosophy. And the acceptance part, like my dad has this phrase called oasis. you know um when people are like stuck in the desert and they can see water, it's like that's the oasis, the thirst in a way. And for him, oasis means like, oh, as is, meaning, oh, accept everything as is. And like everything, from conflict, from traffic, you're placing in a show, just accepting everything and not, and just fully embracing it, and then making a conscious choice of what that means for me and like how I want to respond to that. And I think that being conscious is freedom, but it
Mhm.
requires a lot of discipline. And discipline has a bad stigma, right? It seems like restricted. A lot of people, when I compete for a show, like, wow, you can't have that. No, I can have that cookie. I just choose not to. Right? Like if my husband says something I don't like, yeah, I can if I wanted to be passive aggressive like I used to, but I'm going to make a mindful choice not to, because I know better now. And when I know better, I do better. Um, and I think it's a daily work, and it's something I'll have to work on for the rest of my life. But I think ultimately, as human beings, we all strive for that. We want to feel free. We want to feel free, but again, I think in retrospect, what I thought was freedom was accumulating a lot and doing a lot. And now like freedom is like way more about simplicity and training my brain.
Absolutely. That's ultimately what's dictating our life. It's not the
Yeah.
trophy or the outcome or the stage or itself, and even the process, yeah, embrace the process, respect the process, prioritize the process over the outcome. But what we then forget is, well, what's actually defining that process? It's ourselves. It's the way we're thinking and viewing. It's our perspective. And to be able to what's the word, maybe make use or capitalize on the mind that we've been given to benefit us is so much more beneficial than just saying, oh, I'm just going to go through the motions and yeah, trust the process and push, push, push. And ultimately that's probably for the end result to be better rather than for the way that you feel after. And you've talked about how competing really needs to be aligned with the athlete, and how all seasons need to be a tool for resiliency and being okay with rest. And I was curious when you realized that those were some key aspects to competing.
Yeah, for sure. Like I mentioned, I think, my philosophical and practical approach to bodybuilding has shifted tremendously. And as far as rest, I mean, back then my motto was like, I'll rest when I die, go big or go home. I mean, I used to be that person like barely warmed up and would hit heavy back squats, I probably could do it back then because I was younger. And I didn't have any like aches or pains like I do now. And now I think, I mean, it's just like on the practical standpoint. So my personal trainer is Mike DeRocco. And I always tag him on my Instagram, so you can find him there. He does all my like off-season programming right now. And what we do is we kind of strategize deloads. We push heavy, but every week it's progressive overload. And so deload is like a very new concept for me, and it totally makes sense. And it allows me to push hard when I need to, and then also know that rest is equally, if not more important, so I can be in this long term. And I think that goes the same for bodybuilding. It's bodybuilding is, it's a temporary look on stage. Kind of want to get in, be lean, and then be out, and then really take advantage of the off season. So I think people overvalue quote unquote prep, like losing the body fat, and they undervalue rest, recovery, the time it takes to build muscle. It takes so much time. It takes so much patience. So I think rest has definitely changed my systematic approach to weightlifting and training. And then kind of the philosophy side, it's instilled like a lot of patience in myself. And like, again, this is like a 3-year off season. It's kind of not the typical bikini bodybuilding time apart from the stage. But for me, it's worked in the past, and it's definitely has strengthened me as a person and athlete. And if I had to calculate, I would say like 75 to 80% of my time since competing has been off season.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then that's where the growth is.
Yeah, that's so true. Like there's a lot that we gain from prep, but when you take that time off, I think you said patience. I feel like that's the key word for me personally. It's patience, and it's knowing that because I'm committed to this journey and I love it, it doesn't matter how much time it takes for me to get where I want to go, because ultimately I started this and I do this because I love to do it.
Yeah.
And I think it's cool that you've been able to continuously learn over the years and every year and recognize the benefit in taking time off, which can be hard for some to conceptualize. And you've been able to not just change mentally and emotionally, but also on a physical level. Like I mentioned earlier, you've put on a lot of muscle mass. You've gotten so much stronger as well. How does your training change from prep and improvement season, if at all? And what do you feel has been most incremental to your muscle development?
So I would say, I've had a personal trainer since I was 18 years old. So I've always loved lifting weights. But I will say, how I'm lifting in the past couple of years is definitely very like sports specific. Um, my previous trainer, I had kind of introduced me to a lot of like the bodybuilding moves. And I'll always be appreciative of her. And then my current coach now, a personal trainer, Mike, um, like I've never really hip thrusted really heavy until I met him. And I've been training with him for about a year now. And I remember in like our first handful of sessions, I think I can only hip thrust like 180 or something like that at the time. And I remember him saying, oh, one day you'll get to 400. And I remember thinking, yeah, okay, sure. Like, I don't know about that. I didn't really have a reference point of like, how my potential for hip thrusting. But he's a smart guy, and he's very hardworking, and he's taken a lot of time to like get to know like what my physique goals are. And so training with him has completely changed, I think, my physique. And right now we're actually doing a little mini cut. So I'm excited about that, just to kind of see. So almost like a prep before the prep, just to see how I look and my shape and musculature underneath some of the fat. And then I think that will give us some more key pointers to work with as far as like what to build. But based on feedback in 2018, the judges said I didn't need to like get too big, but maybe just build out a little bit more glutes.
I think that's so cool that you're able to focus on lifting in a new way and be able
Yes.
to see that that's actually benefiting you. You trusted the process. So you went into a new relationship with a trainer and you said, okay, this is what my goals are. And he was like, well, this is what we're going to have to do. And even though you had some doubts about your own abilities, you've been able to prove yourself wrong. And you've been able to do so many more like compound lifts, you lifting even heavier. And I think that that's probably going to be beneficial when you're cutting or when you're doing, your prep for the, you said next year you're doing your pro debut, right?
Yes. So I still keep in touch with Jamie. And so starting January, we will start prepping for shows, and she wants me to be at about like 18 to 20% body fat roughly starting January. And maybe if I had to give a range, maybe like, 10 to 12 pounds, or maybe even 15 pounds above stage weight. That way I can take the time to prep. And so that's something I'm actually like never really done before. I usually like my mindset back then was kind of like the old school bodybuilding approach, which was like off season I would just gain as much weight as I wanted, and I would have to lose like 30 pounds roughly. And I did like the traditional 3 to 4 month prep. And I will not do that again. Like, it might work for somebody else, but for me it's just too stressful on my body. And it just doesn't become enjoyable. So I definitely am trying to be a lot more strategic and smart about it, based on kind of my history of prepping. But yeah, I think it's kind of cool to have like a really specific goal, and then to kind of measure that. I think those are really important in the off season, like to transition from the stage. When you get off, it's kind of funky. It's a kind of funky time. So setting like measurable goals, mindset goals, and physique goals in the off season are very, very important to kind of continue the momentum.
Absolutely. So important. And it's okay to let go of like the prep goals or like what you thought might be your journey in order to embrace what is actually important at that time. And I always tell my girls, I'm like, set goals during your prep for your improvement season and then reevaluate them during your week, your week post show. Utilize that to reevaluate the goals, because a lot of times we set goals for improvement season as though we're still in prep, and they're not the same.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. I'm definitely not the same. And there's like a common theme when I listen to all your podcasts, the challenges of an off season, which I think we're definitely more like well informed, but it's still the off season, especially a long one. It can be hard. You don't really see the physical improvements. You don't see your lines coming in.
But your butt is bigger.
Yes, exactly. Way bigger. There's so like, I just love off seasons. I think it's fun. You get to push the weight in the gym. It's less focused externally. It's builds a lot of long-term values that even when you're done competing and if someone retires, you just bring those valuable lessons, with you for the rest of your life. It's kind of like investing in your 401k, it's like your future
Yep.
self, and I
That's
think that's
funny.
one of the, like, I really admire and appreciate about you, like your Instagram post. I love how you post just your personal journey and like being so
Mhm.
authentic about it, and your off-season physique, which I think is amazing.
Thank you.
Um, because I think we need to have more of that. I think, I mean, again, I'm like passionate about bodybuilding.
Mhm.
Um, there's so many benefits, but there's a lot of dark sides too. And so I think like normalizing, this is what a normal human being looks like, when they're not
Yeah.
stage lean, and that's okay. And I think, the mindset that you have, Celeste, like for sure you will reach your goal in the
Thank
sport
you.
and life. And like, because you have the right attitude. And I think it's all about that attitude. And you're patient and willing to take the time and train hard, and at the same time, simultaneously helping other people. And the sport attracts, again, a lot of extremists, a lot of people that are using the sport to kind of cover up maybe things in their life too. And it can bring up a lot of, again, like leaks in the foundation. And so I think you're really bridging the gap in many ways and helping people, which will serve them, again, for the rest of their time on earth.
Well, thank you so much. That means a lot to me. It really is a passion, and I feel it's my purpose. And hearing you say that really just hits home for me because that's what I want to be able to do. And I appreciate you recognizing my work ethic and my mentality as well. And yeah, I don't know what to say other than thank you. I appreciate that. And obviously, I feel like we're connecting so much because you've made a lot of those internal transformations. We share a lot of the same ideals of being patient, taking that time, recognizing there's a time and place for everything. And
Yeah.
I think, we have to see there are going to be tough times. There's going to be tough times in every season. And you're signing up for a sport that isn't all sunshine and rainbows. And it's especially important to take care of your mental health because of that. And I did want to touch a bit on your journey then to becoming a pro, because
Yeah.
you had said that in a post I read, like, that prepping for North Americans was like the hardest prep for you. And at some points you felt so overwhelmed and stressed, and you'd eat late at night, and yeah, you'd be stressing out. And then one day you decided you weren't going to be a victim anymore. How did you transform that mentality from like victimhood to really victory, if we want to be,
Yeah.
cliche, and ultimately
Yeah.
getting your pro card?
Um, well, I guess I'll backtrack a bit before I answer that.
Yeah.
Like I mentioned earlier, every show I had a personal hurdle. And this is not unique to me. I think, life is hard, life is challenging. It throws a lot of curveballs.
Mhm.
But like, in 2014, the hurdle was prepping with a broken foot while in school full time and with my husband in school. And then when I prepped in 2016, um, actually I started prep in 2015. I had just delivered a baby, my son, and I started prep 3 days after delivering.
Wow.
And I wanted to make it in my mind to go back on stage 12 months postpartum, um, with a messed up back, being in school full time. And again, my husband was still in school. So that was a hurdle. And then in 2018, when I finally did get my pro card, it was like all the hurdles were stacking up at
Oh
that point.
man.
And so I I gave everything for that pro card for that show. And what I meant by everything, I again, I lost connection to myself. I didn't
Mm.
have the relationship that I wanted with my family. I used up every single freaking penny for that show, that I even remember when I got off stage and I got my pro card and I called my girlfriend Charity, and I met her through bodybuilding, and I told her, "Oh my God, I got my pro card." And she was like, "When are you coming back?" And I was like, "You know what? I think I have like 25 bucks in my bank account. And I think that will be enough for me to take Uber back home."
Oh
I
my
mean,
gosh.
and I mean, I was crying, and yeah, I got the trophy, But again, every other aspect of my life was like just crumbled in pieces. And so I don't know, what was your question, Celeste? Totally forgot.
No, I was really curious how you transformed from being a victim to ultimately winning your pro card. And I kind of want to actually talk about what you just said, which is you gave everything, but maybe that wasn't the best.
It's interesting because I still feel like I had that victim, even though I got my pro card, I still had that victim mentality. I was like, again, always a hard worker, and that's like, working hard is easy for me. Being exposed to like chaos and pain is easy to me because I grew up in a chaotic environment, right? So even though I got my pro card, I still had a mentality that didn't serve me. So that's one of the reasons why, like, I'm so excited to go back now with this like newer version of myself, which is kind of more like my authentic self, coming back home, as they would call it. But yeah, I actually didn't know I was going to get my pro card. I had no expectations really on that day. I was really depleted by that time. Just like I didn't really have much energy or any gas in the tank. It was all demand and no supply. And so yeah, I think the reason why I won that show was that preparation of all the work that I've done physique wise with the perfect opportunity. But I did not think I was going to win my pro card because I saw the females backstage, and on a national level show, these girls, they bring their A game and they look really good. And there's a pro mignon who I'll never forget her name. It's like filet mignon. She's like this beautiful. She was a cheerleader. She was in my class, and when I saw her, I thought she was going to take it because her physique was amazing. I don't know if that answers your question or not.
No, it did. I didn't know if you were going to take that anywhere else, as far as like, you can look around backstage and then you see these girls. Like when I competed at USA's this year, I was like, holy, like that's what I wanted to see in person. What does it look like? Like, what do these pros actually look like? What these girls were gonna turn pro? And sometimes it's a wake-up call, and it's also very inspiring getting on those stages and seeing. And I think you at one point were even told by Sandy Williamson, like, you're not ready for a national show. How did that feel? And that was after you won an overall.
Yeah, I won an overall, and I think that's one of the things that I really appreciate about Jamie as a coach, and all the judges, and Sandy specifically, is that they're very honest and they're well intended. And I had won the overall, and I was like, let's do it. I'm ready. And Jamie's like, no, you're not ready yet. And I was like, are you sure? Are you sure? I did really well. I was kind of confused. And then she's like, let's talk to Sandy. And so Sandy said straight up, like, you're not ready. You need to build your glutes. And I said, okay, I'm totally game for that. And I think that's probably one of the reasons why I had such long off seasons, is that I knew, like, I like to plan ahead, like long. I'm okay with the waiting game. And so after I got just work on lagging muscle parts. And if I had went to nationals at that time, I would have not done well, like, without a doubt. So in hindsight, time is important. And I think there's a misconception, like, if you place really well in a local show, therefore you're national stage ready. And that's not necessarily the truth, because on a national level, again, the competitors are a little bit more muscular. They're really shredded and conditioned. So I think, again, having feedback from a coach who really will care is so important. Jamie has said no to me so many times. And even I contacted her actually, and I said, hey, do you think I should compete this November? Because I just feel like I'm just feeling pumped. I'm feeling energized. This is the happiest I've been in my entire life, intrinsically. And she said, why don't we just wait till next year? Because you'll have way more show options. You'll have more time to build your physique. So I love the word no in a way. It gives more insight of what work needs to be done.
I like that. Rather than saying, oh, I'm going to do it anyway, it's looking at it and saying, well, why? Like, why
Yes.
no? What needs to change?
Yes. And I think also like fully embracing that this sport is um, subjective. The sport is about honing in and loving growth, like physically growth and figuratively
Mm-hmm.
growth, growth as a human being. And I think when that's like the mindset I have now compared to before, I think like more than ever, do I just appreciate the journey? And if I win, if I get a trophy, that's just an extra plus, but it's not the end all be all. And so I do think for people that are competing, finding a coach who can say no to you and isn't desperate. I think desperate can lead to actions that are not really in alignment. And Jamie's definitely not a desperate person. She's not desperate for, she has enough athletes. She's accumulated kind of a certain status now in the bodybuilding world. And so she's very honest. She's very brutally honest, which I like. And again, she wants me to be in the game for the long term. And so that's requires a lot of like strategy and like forward thinking.
Yes. And knowing that if you have a coach who says no and says why they're saying no, it's because they actually care about you and want you to be your best, not because they don't believe in you. And it's more so I'm saying no because I care and I know what your goals are, and therefore it's not the time. And then it became the time, and it ended up working out really well for you. And obviously now you're here taking the time to grow again so that you can step on the pro stages and
Yeah.
with a mentality that's disconnected from the outcome. And I'm curious, like, what do you intend to get from your pro career? Like, are you trying to compete in open divisions? Are you trying to go and get on the Olympia stage? You doing masters? Like, what's your goals?
So my goal is to compete in the open. Again, like I mentioned earlier, I'll be 40 next year. That's
Mhm.
still something that I'm not afraid of getting old. I actually like it. I feel like I have so much more wisdom now.
Mm.
So, and muscle maturity. So I think those aspects will work in my favor when I do compete. But, sometimes it's intimidating because I'm like, oh, I'm going to be against, younger athletes who can recover faster. But again, I think I'm also very mindful of those thoughts, and I have more skills and tools in my tool bag to like reframe my thoughts, right? Like instead of going, gosh, I'm old and I'm only going to do masters only, and give me a better chance to place. Um, my more mindset is like, hey, I have life experience. It served me. I have a physique that have spent so long to build. There's so much pride I take with that. And yeah, I believe I have this through life experiences, through adversity, through like climbing out of dark moments. I do have now this unwavering confidence in my ability to do the best and continuously be a better version of myself. Um, and so to answer your question, next year I want to compete in open. I want to do the best that I can. And I would love the opportunity with my constant effort to go to Olympia.
Heck yeah. That's
Yeah.
awesome. I like that.
Yeah.
Oh.
And funny, like I had told my husband, I'm sure he'll listen to this, but I had told my husband after in 2018, after I got my pro card, like I am done. Like I am not going to be that person that's going to be obsessed and try to get points to go to Olympia. And like, never say never, because here I am now. But I think I can say that now with so much more confidence because like I know what my pillars of happiness are. I know myself a lot more. Again, I have like more tools to work with during difficult times. And so um, I respect the sport so much. And why not set goals that are really challenging? I think that makes life so much more fun in a way. And it kind of proves to myself, and I've proved it, you know, from time to time, like, hey, it's difficult, but if I really work hard and work smart and intelligently, and stay humble and like release a lot of ego and be willing to see my areas of weakness and own it, I can do anything. I can do anything. And I think that's just not unique to me because I'm a human being. I'm not a
Right.
special flower by any means. I think that's true for anybody, including you, like it's so
Hmm.
cool to see your journey and like your unwavering belief in yourself. I think
Thank you.
that is like, I think um it's very inspiring, especially for someone who's never competed before, or
Hmm.
even advanced athletes. I think we all go through mental hurdles. But yeah, I'm excited. I have no idea, how it feels like to be in the pro stage. It'll be my pro debut next year. But I feel ready. I feel really like intuitively and just visceral. Like it's just a feeling like I'm excited. Comes from a very happy place of going for it, and again, something enhancing my life, not so much like I'm going to go for it and because I don't like how I look or where I'm at in my life. I'm not running away anymore from anything. It's not fear based. I don't like that fear based thinking that I had. It really restricted my way of living with myself and my thoughts, and so it's now all like positive um gains. And yeah, I'm really humbled to be doing that because I never thought in a trillion gazillion years that I would ever compete as a pro, ever.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
Especially because you had that situation after 2018 show, like I've given everything and I'm left with nothing else. So
Oh yeah.
how are you prioritizing like finances and other areas of your life this time around, or how do you intend to?
Yeah. Just preparation, preparation. I think in this sport, it's a lot of supply and demand, right? Demand being the time, the effort, and the money it takes to compete. That's something I wasn't really aware of as a newer athlete. Like, wow, it does entail a lot. It does entail a lot of focus. And you can only be so good in many things. When you're prepping for a show, you're giving 100%. So there are trade-offs. Um, and so I think a sense of awareness of that's really important to me. I understand the trade-offs. So I've spent, these 3 years of like saving money. The COVID really helped too. I don't spend a lot. I spend on things that matter, like personal training. I spend on therapy. I spend it on family experiences. So just be mindful of that. And then again, continuing the mindset work this off season. The connection with my husband is the strongest it's ever been in the history of our 10 years of being married. And, we've really built a strong foundation that I cherish a lot. And that, I think, having a lot of that stability emotionally in my relationships and in my finances will allow me that freedom when I compete, that I can be all in, and definitely create environment that's a lot less stressful, because stress,
Yes.
there's shows where I look back sometimes and I'm like, holy crap, I really don't know how I did that, um, and in the moment, again, it seemed like a badge of honor, right? I did a lot. I
Mhm.
can do so many things. I can wear many hats. But it does, without a doubt, because we're all human, it will lead to burnout. And so I think just being way more smart about it, strategic, and then again, practical, like I mentioned earlier, just starting prep to not having to 30 pounds in 3 months, going slow and steady, and hopefully be able to like reverse into my first show, because I reversed into the show that I got my pro card, and that was a day and night experience. And um yeah, I kind of know my body a little bit more. But yeah, I think saving money is huge because the sport is expensive. I don't have sponsors, I pay out of my own pockets. Um and but I think it makes it way more fulfilling too, to be able to work hard and plan for something like a pro debut.
Absolutely. And it is even more gratifying knowing that you were prepared and you were willing to prepare for it so that you could give your all without those distractions. And
Yeah.
I think that definitely makes a big difference in the result, the prep itself, the way that you feel about it, like we were talking about earlier. And I have a kind of random question, but
Yeah.
I definitely wanted to ask this before we get into your advice, because you not only represent moms and masters competitors, but you also represent tattooed athletes.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I was curious if you ever received feedback about your tattoos, or if you felt that they aided you or hindered you in any way.
That is such a great question. Let's see. I've never had feedback about my tattoos. I think the only time I got kind of an informal feedback was at my my second show competing, 2014. I had placed 6th at the time, and I was so upset with my placing. I mean, I was so upset that I left my trophy backstage, and I didn't like. I just left it there. I didn't even care. I was just in my mood, and again, I was kind of at that mindset at the time of like, again, my only goal in life in 2014 was to get a trophy. So if I didn't get one, I kind of created this like adult tantrum. And then backstage was Noelle and her husband John Tuman, and John Tuman said, "Hey, if you want to do well in the sport, like no more tattoos. You have quite a bit." And I do remember that. And I mean, my tattoo is huge. It's like it's full back. It
Yeah.
covers my butt. And there was a time I think where I'm like, like I don't know if I'm really gonna do well in this sport. I'm not. I did have a lot of self doubt in the beginning. I'm not sure. I do have tattoos. It might hurt me. But to my surprise, zero feedback on that. I think the feedback just been more about hasn't been about presentation. If anything, it's like building up the glutes. And genetically speaking, I'm Asian, I'm Thai and Chinese, and I 100% was not blessed with glutes. It was like completely flat, attached to my back like a wall. And so it's taken a lot of time to build that. And I would say that the physique part has been the biggest feedback, but not the tattoos. And I don't know if I have ever seen like any Olympians with as many tattoos as myself. So that would be something very different, and I think
Mm-hmm.
I would love, a deeper why for me to compete besides like the personal challenge and the personal growth is to really represent too for, for people that are 40 and up, for moms, for people that have tattoos, for people that, are Asian and aren't genetically gifted, Asian or not, but just I so happen to be Asian,
Mm-hmm.
that it is possible. It is possible, and it is possible to do it and feel really fulfilled and still have balance in your life as long as you take the time to build yourself up inside and out. It's really doable, and so I think that motivates me more than ever. Kind of the bigger purpose of it, of like how can I serve others and inspire other people, gets me pumped up to compete.
Absolutely. I think that's a really cool way of looking at it. Like it's not just you, it's also inspiring others, because people will listen to this and say, "Oh, I can relate to her," or "I resonate with that athlete."
Yeah.
And to then see you go on and accomplish what you've set out to, or step on stage like that, can go a long way for people and showing them that they can do it too. And I think it's awesome that you are doing that. And of course, you've given us great advice. You even mentioned not too long ago some unwavering belief and facing every mental hurdle regardless. What is your best advice for someone who's never competed before but would like to? And then what's your best advice for a athlete on their road to pro?
So for new athletes, I think my number one advice would be hire a really good coach. It's hard to do it alone. Competing, the stage lean look is very different from your everyday, being at a beach. And as we, I know you've talked about it so many times in your podcast, but there are unfortunately coaches out there that may not have the experience. And to cater to kind of catering to the client and coming up with a plan that can be as healthy as possible. Because the reality is, I know it's a debate. The sport isn't the healthiest per se, as far as like talking about the biological component of it. Our body's not meant to be that shredded and that muscular simultaneously. It's a very temporary look for that day on stage. My analogy is like a temporary tattoo. So for a new person, it's like, get a coach, train smart, be really smart about it, take the time, even if you have to do a reverse diet or build muscle before you actually go into a prep, that's not a bad idea. And then also know that when you do get that look, be okay that it's going to be temporary, and be okay with transitioning to an off season. And I think, I don't know, I think it's something to like, so a new athlete might just need to experience it. I don't think there's any athlete has always been like cheery and, peachy with every single prep that they've endured. I think you can hear these things, someone can listen to the podcast, but you won't really know until you experience it. But having a coach and being open to the adversity that they're going to endure. And hopefully it's a sport that they can look at as enhancing their life. So that would be, I would say, my number one practical advice for newbies.
Amazing. And for the girls who are on their road to pro?
So on the road to pro, I would say stay in your lane and focus on yourself. Um, and what I mean by that is like, we live in a world of distractions. There's social media, which can be really beneficial. Like, like me learning about you and, your services, your journey and your podcast. I think that's a positive. I follow a lot of like psychologists and therapists and science based like professors like Mike Israetel. He's really great on there. So it can really be of a positive thing, but I think it can also be a place where you lose sight of kind of your own journey. And so not playing that comparison game. It's so cliche and we all know it, but I made the mistake of like looking around me at shows, that just brings self-doubt, and going like looking on Instagram and seeing somebody else who'll be competing at the same show and go, gosh, she's like, look at her glutes and I'm not there yet. I think when you have a comparison game, you are always in a constant discontent with yourself. And in the long term, it's just a very unhealthy way of thinking and living. So for someone that wants to go pro, you just have to have that focus on yourself, focus on where you need to improve, eliminate distractions. So that would be Instagram, the people that you surround yourself with. It's a lot of, it's not really the mindset of like what you can get. It's really kind of filtering, filtering the people you follow on social media and the people that you are with around, that you're around day to day. So I've been blessed to like have a very small circle of friends that I call low maintenance friends, because we don't really gossip, whine, or complain. It's, if we do talk, we don't talk that often. It's about like what we've learned, our own growth. It's very positive. There's a lot of like extreme ownership, and my husband, man, he's like living with him, being married to him, therefore living with him and seeing him. He's been such a big influence on my life because just his amount of focus. He's like a laser focused type of person. He's not even on social media. He has like this work ethic that is very admirable, and just doesn't give a hot shit what other people think. So I think you got to have the mindset like not caring so much about other people's opinions and not wasting time on that. Time is, time we can never take back, right? So being very aware of yourself and mindset. I think if you want to go pro, you just have to have a strong mind. Because again, you're just stacked up against other people who are doing the same type of work. And then when you become pro, there's the next thing. There's the next thing. There's no like arrival date. I think that's like what I would want any competitor to know. And that like when I became pro, I got off stage and I like boo-hooed and I cried in the corner, and I was just like, it was so surreal. And I thought about, again, just like all the ups and downs, and mostly the downs that took me to get there. But it's not everything. It's not what people hype it up to be when you're actually there. There's no red carpet that comes out with flashing lights, and it doesn't change your everyday life at all, like really at all. And so my advice is for everyone to like continually assess the reason why you want to compete and how that's going to add value to your life. I think, and I think because we evolve all the time, you know, your why may look different a year ago to where it is now. Like my why has changed a lot, and really checking in with yourself, you know, not getting caught up and lost in the game. Because if you don't know yourself and you don't have a sense of self-worth or direction, and you don't have clarity, right? I don't think people lack motivation. I think they lack clarity of like where they want to go, and then therefore they don't know how to get there, and they end up like perpetual dieting. I mean, you do it as a living. Like you talk to people who binge, right, and then restrict, and then binge and restrict, and you like end up like nowhere. You end up worse than where you are when you first started. So yeah, that would be, I mean, I know I just threw a lot out, like I threw the kitchen sink at you, but
No.
yeah, that would be, you know, my advice. And I'm still learning a lot. I'm still new in the game, if you will. I'm going to be like, you know, the small goldfish in a big ocean now, which I'm again really excited and humbled to be part of. And so I mean, yeah, I would love the opportunity to come back on your podcast later and share how, you know, my journey as a pro, because I know it'll look really differently. But yeah, I'm just grateful for the fundamental lessons now. And then looking at your journey, Celeste, I'm like, wow, man, like you're way younger than me, and like your mindset and ability to see all these things now, like holy crap, like you are way ahead of the game in life. You
Thank
know,
you.
that's going to take you so far. But yeah, those are my 2 cents on that.
You are so sweet. I really appreciate you saying that. And also the advice was awesome. I love that you gave us the whole kitchen sink and then stuff, because like that's what we need to hear. You know, you were real about it too, honest and transparent this whole episode. And I am grateful for that, and you sharing your experiences and your story and your perspectives, and how you are looking at things differently now than when you started, because that's what helps people who are starting out or who are maybe in the trenches go, oh, that's actually a better perspective, or oh, maybe that can inform my next perspective that I'm going to choose to have. And so if it wasn't for people like you who are willing to actually say, here's what I've learned, I think there wouldn't be as many people who are learning the lessons ahead of time, so to speak, and being able to apply that. So thank you for sharing that so much,
Yeah,
and for your
yeah,
time too. I've enjoyed every minute of talking to you and just connecting with you. And of course, I want other people to reach out to you. And you mentioned your Instagram earlier, but can you give us your handle for that, and then anywhere else people might find you?
sure. Joy Sheppard _ IFBB Pro. And then on there, you'll see, you know, the link to my team, Fit Body Fusion. Jamie's my coach, and the link to my personal trainer, Mike DeRocco. I have a huge following of 1,400. So if anyone wants to follow, you're
Well,
more
you're
than welcome.
amazing.
Oh, you're so kind. And you know, I know you didn't ask me to say this, but I do feel like I want people to know, like, lastly, like it's okay to be human while you're preparing for the sport. You know, it's, if you binge, like don't feel ashamed and don't feel alone, and reach out for help, right? Like go get a therapist. If there's a mentor, and I think the services that you're providing now, Celeste, I think we need that more than ever. And I think
Thank
you
you.
like you really fill this gap in bodybuilding, right? It attracts a certain type of person. And then I think it's almost like if I could turn back time and you had your service, Celeste, I would almost like contact you first as like a prerequisite, just to kind of take inventory of my mindset, my relationship with my body, my relationship with food, before diving into this world of the unknown. But again, no regrets. But I think that because you're offering a service that's like of so much value, I hope that people do take advantage of that, because it'll make their life so much easier in the sport of bodybuilding, especially if they want to do it long term.
Well, thank you so much for that, and for hyping up what I'm doing, because yeah, that just means a lot to me. It's totally is my passion. Like I said earlier, it's my life. And I see this gap of girls who are either afraid to reach out because we're supposed to be perfect and all or nothing, and other people can do it, but that's not always the case. And I think people would be surprised to know I've worked with IFBB pros. I've worked with girls who have never competed before but want to. I've worked with girls who are in a lifestyle phases, and I've worked with, of course, NPC competitors in other divisions and other, not even just bikini, and other federations too. And I think there's that common denominator of, if you're willing to work on your mindset and your inner personal growth and development, you're going to show up better for the process, and it's going to be way more fulfilling. So if you guys are interested in working with me, let me just plug that really quick. You can go to celestial.fit. My food relationship program is one of my best as far as working with me one-on-one and personally. I also offer just one-on-one mentorship altogether, but you can always learn more about that on the website. And I have a ton of free resources that are always linked on the podcast page. So like my food relationship program, that's a free series. I have one of those. That's celestial.fit/food series. And then I've got a free post-show personal development program that leads into a longer one. Yeah, like I've got like competitor card deck, everything. I've been really just committed to getting you guys what you need to make the most of your mindset in these seasons, regardless of if you work with me or not. So Joy, thank you for sharing that and allowing me to take some time to promote that as well. And I'm going to put your link, of course, to your Instagram in the show notes page, which is always on celestial.fit/podcast. Wherever you guys are listening, usually there's going to be notes and timestamps there. You're more than welcome to reach out on Instagram as well, and I can send you that. If you're looking for discounts, things like DIY tan or the Shoe Fairy heels, things of that nature, Bam Body, of course, go to the podcast page or my Instagram and you'll be able to get lots of cool discounts for that kind of stuff. And I appreciate you guys tuning in every week, supporting the show, supporting the podcast. And Joy has been listening since it started. And now I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm actually talking to someone who has seen this develop from the get-go, and it's such a pleasure for me. So thank you again for coming on.
Thank you again, Celeste. And I will hit you up with your services, because like I'm all about the mindset now. And we have like so many things in common and kind of like alignment in our way of thinking. But again, I can always do better. And so, yeah, I'll definitely hit you up with your what you can offer. So I'm excited about that.
Yeah, me too. We'll definitely talk, and I'm always here for you. And I'm glad that you feel that way and that you're so committed to your growth. And to everybody listening, hope you enjoyed this episode and have an amazing rest of your day, night, or morning, wherever you are in the world while you're listening to this episode. Just make it awesome.